Welcome and thank you for tuning in to the 412 Double Play podcast. Trade deadline on the horizon. Pirates in position to make some additions this time around. Hopefully we get something soon because it hasn't happened as of this recording. I am, as always, your host, Michael Castrogano, riding solo this week, but Andrew Destin of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is joining me in a pre-recorded segment later on to talk about both his experiences at the All-Star Game festivities, the draft, as well as some thoughts he has on how the team will approach the upcoming trade deadline. It's a little dated already. We recorded it on Friday, but hopefully you guys get some enjoyment out of watching it anyway and possibly some information. But we're going to go ahead and jump in with the transactions from this past week. Friday, after a back issue kept him out of the game on the Thursday, the last game, on Wednesday, the last game of the Cardinals series, Brian Reynolds went on bereavement leave ahead of the weekend series in Arizona. Ji-Hwan Bae recalled from Indy to take his spot on the roster. Hunter Stratton was also activated ahead of the series from the injured list, with Josh Fleming getting DFA'd, second time this season that's happened for him, I believe, to clear a spot on the active roster. And then ahead of the final game today, Nick Gonzalez, he landed on the 10-day injured list with a left groin discomfort. We don't know the extent or how long he'll be out, but those things typically are problematic. Alika Williams was recalled from Indy to take his spot on the roster. We did have some updates as far as some IL stuff. Bailey Falter had a rehab start this past week with Indy. He likely will be making a start this week or at the latest next week. He's currently back with the team. You saw him in the dugout during the Arizona trip. Jared Jones has also started throwing bullpens, likely moving to a rehab stint himself in the near future. TBD on the exact return. We also had a number of the draft picks signed ahead of the upcoming deadline on August 1st. 9 of the 11 drafted in the first 10 rounds have signed with the Pirates, notably not first-rounder Connor Griffin, nor second-rounder Wyatt Sanford. A good amount of the money is tied up to those. The pick value for Sanford in the second round, 47th overall, is $1.98 million, and the slot for Connor Griffin's 9th overall pick, $6.22 million. They have gone under slot with a number of their selections so far. I don't think they've gone over slot with anyone yet, but they only have a couple of days. We'll know by Thursday if they sign all of them. Additionally, there's a number of the players in the 11 through 20 rounds who are still unsigned. It's mostly college players, so likely they will go below slot or around there. It's unlikely that any of them will be too big of an issue, but also something to keep an eye on. Again, the deadline for that stuff is August 1st. It's definitely going to be a bit problematic in the upcoming days and weeks. Nick Gonzalez heading to the IL. Again, left groin discomfort. That could be a lingering issue. Don't know the extent of it. They're not saying strain. They're not saying tear, which is great. But that can hamper guys. And hopefully he's able to recover quickly and able to recover fully, because you don't want to be trying to fight through that. In the meantime, they're going to have to try to battle without Nicky Two Bags. So let's go ahead and look at the weekly recap, because his name popped up a couple times. We had a pair of series against teams ahead of us in the wild card standing, starting off hosting the Devil Magic St. Louis Cardinals. Last week, game 1, Mitch Keller, it wasn't exactly his sharpest outing. Managed to go 7 innings, 1 run, 6 hits, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. His mound opponent, Andre Palante, matched him 6 innings, 1 run ball of his own. The difference maker came in that 8th inning. RBI machine, Nicky Gonzalez. He drove in the second run for the Bucks as they secured a 2-1 win for the opener of the series. Game 2, Paul Skeens on the mound. So you know this must have been a win, right? He pitched into the 9th for the first time in his MLB career. 2 runs, 4 hits, no walks, 8 strikeouts. Somehow got the loss, as the Pirates only managed an RBI single by Gonzalez in the 8th. Weren't able to break through in any meaningful way against the Cardinals, as the Redbirds won 2-1. And then game 3, Martin Perez had 7 shutout frames against the Cardinals earlier this season, posted another 6 shutout frames this time around, 4 hits, 2 strikeouts, 5 walks. May have actually allowed 1 run in that previous outing. Carmen Mlodzinski, Colin Holderman, Aroldis Chapman, they added zeros while the team stepped up. Rowdy Tellez hit a home run among his 2 hits, and the Pirates won 5-0 to win the series against the Cardinals. But then heading on the road, Arizona, the offense really looks bad when they don't have Reynolds in there. And the Arizona offense is really good, like one of the top at least 5 in all of baseball. Bucks did jump on Diamondback starter Zach Gallen early, 2-run single in the first by Josh Palacios, and then an RBI double by Kutch in the second, gave them an early 3-0 lead. Luis Ortiz was giving up a lot of hard contact all game. He managed to have them find gloves for the most part, but 6th inning, gave up the lead-off home run to Jock Peterson, left after walking Christian Walker. Mlodzinski came in, he gave up the tying and go-ahead runs as the Bucks lost 4-3. Game 2, Marco Gonzalez, soft-tossing southpaw, trying to match up against one of the best offenses against lefties. I think they maybe are 2nd or 3rd overall against left-handed pitching, and they just were all over everything he was throwing. 4 runs, 3 walks, 7 hits through 2.1 innings. Dennis Santana came in and was just shut down. Struck out 5 of the 6 batters he faced, did allow the 1 hit, but 1.2 innings, struck out all 5 of his outs. Bucks bats actually showed up. Cruz homered in the first. Joey Bart, Ji-Hwan Bae, and Michael A. Taylor each got RBIs in the 5th to tie the game temporarily. But Quinn Priester came on, long relief, bulk roll, hadn't pitched in 8 days. Just did not look good. He imploded. 5 runs off 5 hits, 1 walk. Kind of just left him out there for the final 4 innings as the team lost 9-5. Final game, wildest one of the series. If you guys are watching this now, listening to this now, you have to have heard. It was just nuts. Mitch Keller, the stopper of this rotation, comes in and had an awesome start. It's kind of been forgotten, and I'm recording this several hours after the game ended. So 7 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. Both of the hits and runs came in the, I believe, 4th inning. But outside of that, looked a little shaky early on. Like the cutter, I think he was losing a feel for it, and the curve was a bit off. But man, he made his pitches when he needed to, for the most part. Left with the team down 2-1. Solo home run by O'Neal Cruz earlier in the game was the lone run for the Pirates to that point, but the Bucks battled back. I got to break it down for you. 9th inning, pinch hit leadoff double by Rowdy Tellez. He was pulled from the game on Saturday. He was hit in the hand by a pitch, and so we thought that maybe it was that. Earlier in the game, actually had back spasms was the reason. He was good enough to pinch hit today, Sunday, and will hopefully be available for the Astros series this week. Anyway, he gets a leadoff double. Alika Williams runs for him. Joey Bart, 2-out RBI double, ties the game. But then, because Bart was also a pinch hitter, we get some weird positioning. Jared Triolo was second. He moves to right field. Alika Williams is at second. Grandal moves to first base. Bart's now catching. Chapman comes in. He goes 1-2-3 in the frame. Diving catch by Jared Triolo to end it, which is nuts because this is his first time playing outfield in 2 years, first time in the majors. And so that was really an awesome play. 10th inning starts with Tree at second. Bunt single by Bay puts men on the corners. Grandal walks on 4 pitches. They wanted no part of him for some reason. So we got bases loaded. Fielder's choice by Kutch with Triolo out at home. And then Bay scores on a wild pitch. So now we're up. Cruz has walked intentionally to load them again. And then Alika Williams hit by pitch. We're up by 2 runs at this point. Palacios, fielder's choice. Grandal out at home. Oh, no. Grandal would have scored. Kutch out at home at that point. And then Hayes, 0 for 4 up to that point, comes up. Hasn't been lifting anything for I don't know how long. Drives a 2-run single to left center. So we have a 6-2 lead going to bottom of the 10th. Colin Holderman comes on. He's had some struggles lately. Was nails really early on the season. Past couple starts, you're starting to see that come back. Gives up a 2-run shot to Eugenio Suarez. May or may not have been fan interference. New York said no, but it was close. It's debatable. Palacios was camped under it. Seemed confident that he was going to make the catch. Hard to say. Apparently not. So, 2-run, leadoff home run, because ghost runner. And then, so it's a 2-run lead at that point. Holderman gets 2 outs, gives up another home run to Lourdes Gurriel, and then a triple to Corbin Carroll. So now it's 6-5. Tying run is on third, and is also one of the fastest people in baseball. But then Holderman gets a ground out to Grandal at first, and the Pirates magically win 6-5. So we've had a lot of, and I tweeted this shortly after the game, we've had a lot of bad losses this season. In the Mets series at the beginning of this month, the Giants series in May, where we blew the last 2 games with late leads. This was like a bad win. Like there was just a lot of, it wasn't errors so much. It was just like weird things, and having Grandal at first and Triolo in right field, and the configuration, no Reynolds, Rowdy's out, it was a weird way that this all went about. I forgot to mention in the transactions that after the game today, they advised that Jack Sawinski, and as you're listening to this, it's already happened, I'm sure, will be sent down to Indianapolis, most likely to welcome the return of Reynolds to the team. Sawinski's been struggling a lot. I think he's still batting under 200. It's like 180. So he's one of the worst everyday hitters. Definitely something that hopefully he can work on in Indianapolis. But it's been rough. He's had some stretches where you think that he's going to turn things around, and then it just doesn't happen. Speaking of down on the farm, though, teams had a mixed week. Starting with Indianapolis, they were at the Iowa Baby Cubs, and they swept them. They won all 6. Team had a lot of offense this week. Seth Beer hit 3 home runs. Aleka Williams had 11 hits, 7 walks, and he only played in 5 games because he was up with us today. And 4 separate hitters on the team had 8 or more RBI on the week. Indy improves their record to 46 and 52 on the season. Altoona at the Erie Seawolves. The Curve unfortunately lost 5 of 6 this week. Curve and Pichardo hit 2 home runs, while Charles McAdoo, he just keeps hitting 2 doubles and a home run among his 8 hits this week. Pitching side, Thomas Harrington, he didn't have his best stuff in his start and still posted a line of 5.2 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 2 walks, a hit by pitch. The control was a bit, and 5 strikeouts. So I've been saying all season that he's probably our biggest trade piece that I'd be okay with trading. And I still kind of feel that way. But it would suck. He's got some really good stuff. The Curve fall to 40 and 56 in the record books. Greenville Grasshoppers hosting the Asheville Taurus. The Hoppers lost 4 of 6. Termarr Johnson saw his 17-game hit streak come to an end with a bit of a rough week. But Jack Brannigan, 2 home runs. Mitch Jebb, he went 12 for 24 on the week. Mostly singles. I think it was like 2 doubles, but hits are hits. You get guys on base. You got some power bats on that team to bring them around. Didn't happen so much this week, but Jebb's got some upside. It's weird, but it's upside. Dominic Parachi in his start was nearly untouchable. 6 scoreless innings, 1 hit allowed, no walks, 11 strikeouts. Crazy. Like I feel like I'll just randomly hear about Parachi, and he's just had an amazing start. Hoppers nonetheless dropped to a 57 and 38 record on the week and on the season, excuse me. And then finally, Bradenton hosting the Lakeland Flying Tigers. The Marauders also dropped 4 of 6 in their series matchup. And Manuel Torrero and Esmeralyn Valdez each hit a pair of home runs this week. Carlson Reed, starting pitcher, another strong outing. 5 innings, 2 runs, both unearned, 2 walks, and 9 strikeouts. He's starting to heat up. He might be getting a late season call up to Greensboro, hoping he earns it. He's been having a great year. Marauders are now 40-56 on the year. Hunter Barco left his game. I think it was on Saturday early. Something to keep an eye on. I'm not sure if they released any information on that. But, yeah, I don't think I have too much going on there. Henry Davis has been hitting pretty well at Indianapolis. I don't know what they're specifically looking for from him. Grandal, for all the flack that Grandal gets, it's pretty clear that Paul Skeens has him as his primary catcher. I think Mitch Keller also likes throwing to Grandal. He had him today, whereas he had Bart last week. I think that the relationship, the rapport, whether it's like game calling, framing, he is a serviceable backstop defensively in his own way. Bart obviously has a stronger arm. He's got the most cut stealing among all catchers in the month of July, which, small span, but still pretty impressive. But Davis at some point is probably going to have to get another shot, especially if he's healthy. All right, well, I mentioned at the top of the show that I talked to Andrew Destin the other day. Some of the stuff, like I said, we talked about, it's already dated, but he's got some great insights from the All-Star festivities, the draft, and how the front office is allegedly approaching the trade deadline. Enjoy. All right, and joining me for the special this week, Pirates beat reporter for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, returning to the show, Andrew Destin. Thanks for jumping on today. How are you doing? How are you enjoying the Pirates actually being a competitive team this year in this season?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on, Michael. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, I mean, really, the last couple of years here in Pittsburgh with covering the Penguins, covering the Pirates, and last year really taking that step forward with the 14-win improvement, and then this year now being right around 500 as a team. A little bit of exceeding of expectations on my end. I thought they'd be a team that would be, finishing a couple games under 500, but with the addition of Paul Skeens, that's certainly been a fun little endeavor to cover. So it's been a blast on my end. I can't say enough good things about covering the team this year.
Yeah, and I mean, they're currently in a stretch facing a lot of tough teams. They've done well so far. We're recording this the morning of the beginning of the Arizona series, so we can't comment on anything that happened during that. That'll be taken care of during the rest of the show, but our focus is going to be on stuff that's already happened and a little bit ahead of time, because less than 2 weeks ago, All-Star break, you were there. MLB Draft, Home Run Derby, Pirates pitcher starting the Midsummer Classic for the first time in nearly 50 years. Experiencing that all in person, what was the atmosphere like in Arlington? One, being surrounded by all these talented players at the same time, but also the media frenzy of Paul Skeens being surrounded by all these media people at the same time.
Yeah, first and foremost, it was a lovely experience. I'm fortunate enough at this stage in my career that I've covered a Super Bowl, I've covered an NHL All-Star game, covered some marquee college football games, bowl games. And for me, this was right up there at the top in terms of memorable experiences. The Home Run Derby, for one, watching Hernandez go at it with Bobby Witt Jr., that was tremendous. The All-Star game itself, the festivities leading up to that were spectacular. But strictly to the Paul Skeens experience, I mean, that was something that to me, I look at as this was the guy who was the story of the game. I've made this comment to a few people that basically the way that I interpreted it was you go around to all the different podiums, right? They got little kiosks set up for each player on the media day on Monday where you can kind of bounce around and talk to everybody. And everybody had their individual stories. So like for the Phillies, it's guys talking to Bryce Harper about, hey, are you going to add at the trade deadline? For the Mariners, are you going to add offense? Things like that. But the recurring theme, the big, I would say, national story was that you go around to ask anybody, all anybody wanted to ask about was Paul Skeens. And the players loved talking about Paul Skeens, whether it was the pitchers in awe, the hitters in amazement, or fear. So that to me was like a big takeaway, was just no matter who you were talking to, whether it was Yankees guys, whether it was the Phillies, whether it was the Red Sox, like all these reporters and all these players were talking about Paul Skeens. And that reflected in the way that the week went, right? I mean, this is a guy who the All-Star game gets the start, first time in roughly 50 years, like you said, only a fifth rookie ever to do it. First since Hideo Nomo, if I have that correctly.
Yep.
Skeens was spectacular. That was just, a brief snippet on the national stage, but in general, just a truly memorable experience. And he was certainly center stage all weekend, whether he was involved in those conversations or not, if they were with other players and henceforth.
It definitely seemed like the big story of the week, but obviously the week started off with the amateur draft. Class this year didn't have the big names at the top as last year. No quote unquote generational talent like Skeens, no Wyatt Langford, both of whom are major league players now. Dylan Cruz, who was widely touted last year. Pirates didn't have that top pick this year, though. Going ninth, they selected prep shortstop Connor Griffin, ninth overall. Multiple prospect hawks have praised the pick. He has some of the biggest upside in the class. You did write about Griffin following the selection. Awesome read. Highly recommend people check that out if they haven't already. But what can you tell fans about Griffin and why they should be excited about him to join the organization?
Yeah, you want to talk about tools. I mean, first and foremost, that's what stands out the most to me about this guy. We could talk about the background. I mean, this is a guy who you and I, Michael, we've talked about, before recording this, how high of a character guy this guy is. And, you can read the story to learn more about those exploits, whether that's going to, his head coach's daughter's dance recital or things of that nature, hosting hitting clinics. Like, this is a guy who's got a good head on his shoulders and seems to have been raised right. The thing that stands out to me is how toolsy he is. And this is a guy that, you throw those phrases around, right? Like a 5-tool can't miss prospect. I'm going to say pump the brakes a little bit. He's a high school kid. Give him some time. He's going to need to work through some changes, right? Like the swing needs some adjustments. He hasn't faced that high of quality of competition before, though he has on some international stages, like with Team USA. But in fairness, it's a brief sample size. It's a young kid. He's a high school guy. Like, he's going to need some time to figure out, okay, is this guy for real? Is he not? And when will he get to the big leagues, if and when, right? That might be 3-4 years down the line, frankly, at the earliest. Like, he might not debut till 23 or 24. That being said, what he has there is tremendous upside. This guy is as fast as anybody, right? Set a Mississippi high school state record for stolen bases in a season with 85 or whatever it was. Throws 96 miles an hour off the mound and could have been a first-round pick as a pitcher if he wanted to go that route, but he didn't want to. He wanted to be a two-way guy and now focus on being either a shortstop or a center fielder. Elite athlete, good defender, great arm, can huck it across the diamond. The only concern on my end really with him is just the swing path, but I imagine that's going to be the first thing that the Pirates take a really serious look at once he gets involved with them, once he actually signs. Like, that's something we could see of, hey, this is when Connor Griffin starts to skyrocket. That being said, he'll need some seasoning in the minors. That's inevitable. He's aware of that. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is that he's been exposed to a guy in Jay Powell who pitched for over a decade in the big leagues, and that was his pitching coach in high school. That was his travel ball coach. That was his little league coach. Like, that guy has been around Connor Griffin basically his entire real baseball life, not just the little league levels. I think you can't stress enough how important that is for a young kid, because that puts them in a setting of, hey, let me show you the ropes, how to deal with the media, how to deal with all the pressure, the expectations. Like, I think that's really invaluable to Connor, and I don't think that can be stressed enough.
Yeah. And then, of course, he had some experience with Team USA. One of his fellow picks, I think Levi Sterling, who just signed, as of this recording, I think it was yesterday. So he is officially with the Pirates. I think went for pretty much his slot. How important is it for these players, these high schoolers who are getting drafted, going to pretty much into the workforce? Because being a baseball player is a job, even though we all see it as a game. At times, the players see it as a game. It's a job that they have to do. They have regimented schedules and workouts and things that they need to do. But how important is it for these young kids to have someone who they have that camaraderie with? Sterling and Griffin both playing on Team USA previously. What kind of impact does that have for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable, right? If you're a ball player, you're going to get acclimated to a team and make friends quickly and meet new faces and become tight with the guys that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. That being said, it can only help, right? It can only help these guys when you get invested in a minor league system and you're making what's a titanic jump, right? Levi Sterling, yeah, he pitched at a very good high school baseball program at Notre Dame High in California, a school that's produced guys like Giancarlo Stanton and Hunter Green. The list goes on. Like, that's a very good baseball program. And no disrespect to Jackson Prep, where Connor Griffin went, but he's the first guy to be drafted out of there, I believe, if I have that correctly, in the first round. So this is a guy who, yeah, he comes from a very solid baseball program, but not quite to that same level. Regardless, to have those two, to have them be kind of your headliners of the draft, and they have some familiarity and they know each other and they can lean on each other as they rise the ranks, and they're both two-way guys when they were in high school, like, that can only help. These guys have a lot in common. They've got some similarities. For them to rise the system together can only be a good thing for the Pirates.
Yeah, and similar to, I'm not going to make direct comparisons, but Paul Skeens, Jared Jones were both two-way guys in high school, played against each other, had that kind of familiarity. Now they're both, as soon as Jones comes back in a couple weeks, per your foretelling ability, is going to be mid-August. Hopefully that we'll see him return. But the team could look a lot different by then. We're only a couple days away from the trade deadline. As I mentioned, we're recording this on Friday morning ahead of that D-back series. Very possible that deals are going to be done. Randy Rosarina was traded yesterday. AJ Puck was traded yesterday. I don't think Puck would have been someone they were going to look at, but it wouldn't have been a bad idea to add a lefty reliever. But as that unfolds over the next couple days, can you give me one player you want the Pirates to trade for, one who you most expect them to trade for, and like the highest prospect that you think would be shipped out, or caliber of prospect in range that you think the Pirates would be most willing to deal at this stage in the competition window?
Ooh, love this question. Let's start with the first one. Let's go with, who are the Pirates going to get, or who is somebody that I would like to see them get. I would say that Tommy Pham is a guy that I think makes a lot of sense. He's on an expiring contract. He's a veteran. Yes, he's got some clubhouse concerns, but he's a guy that I think if there's a clubhouse that could absorb him, it's the Pirates. And frankly, I think, as much as there are legitimate clubhouse concerns with Tommy Pham, I think they're a little bit blown out of proportion. Like, there's some incidents that are certainly raise your eyebrows, but it's not as if it's not a day-to-day thing where it's like a toxic guy in the room. At least that's not been my interpretation of it. It's a guy that wants to win and holds his teammates to a high standard. And I think that that's exactly what's going on in Pittsburgh right now. Like, you have guys like Andrew McCutchen and Paul Skeens and Brian Reynolds and Mitch Keller in there. Like, I would say it's a business-oriented clubhouse. Like, they have fun, but this isn't a group that Tommy Pham would walk into and say, oh my God, like, nobody's holding my standard. Like, that wouldn't be the case. I think he makes a lot of sense because you wouldn't have to give up a ton of prospect capital for him. The White Sox are certainly looking to move him. From things I've heard, it sounds like the Pirates are interested in him. I think that makes a great deal of sense. I would start with Tommy Pham. Another spot that I would go to is on the relief side. I would say that they need to get a left-handed reliever. As much as, Ryan Borucki's return looks imminent, as much as he was supremely valuable to the Pirates last year, let's take a step back and realize he's missed basically 4 months of game action. And prior to last season, he was pretty much unproven at the big league level, right? Like, he had a solid year with the Blue Jays as a starter, but he kind of fizzled in and out. He was designated for assignment by the Cubs. Like, as much as I personally really like Ryan Borucki as a pitcher, it's a little bit of an unknown. So I would say that they should probably go out and get a left-handed reliever. And the place where I'm going for that is the Oakland A's. And whether that's Scott Alexander, whether that's TJ McFarland, like, those are two names that I look at and say they wouldn't cost a lot. They would help out your bullpen. They're easy, small little pickups. They're not big name cachet guys, but that's where I would look. And in terms of prospect capital, they're not going to trade Bubba Chandler. They're not going to trade Termar Johnson. I would be supremely surprised if either of those guys got dealt. The biggest name, I guess biggest name would be the way to put it. The biggest name that I could see them dealing would be Braxton Ashcraft. The concern with Ashcraft, though, is that this is a guy who's got all sorts of injury history, including this season. That's a concern to teams. The reality is, in my mind, I don't think Braxton Ashcraft projects as a big league starter for a lot of years. I think he projects as a very good high-end leverage reliever who could be an elite setup man for you, who could be an elite closer. If he starts, great, but you're asking a lot of an arm that whenever it's been asked to go down that route as a starter, it's gone haywire for him. So I think Ashcraft would be a guy. Sung Chae Chang, the shortstop, would be another guy that I look at. Those would be probably the two biggest names prospects that I would say the Pirates would be willing to part with.
And I don't think those names would really come as a surprise. I also don't feel like, and again, hopefully by the time this is released, people aren't saying, well, this guy obviously got traded, but Bubba Chandler and Termarr Johnson. Johnson's really turned the season around. I think we just finished a 17-game hitting streak. Bubba Chandler has been one of the most dominant pitchers in the minor leagues this season for much of the year, at least. So it would be a surprise for them to move them. Is there a player who the fan in you, and I know you didn't grow up a Pirates fan, but now covering the team in your second season, the fan in you wishes that they would go after, knowing that it's likely not going to happen?
I don't know if it's not likely to happen, but I think the biggest splash trade that you could see the Pirates make would be to get Jazz Chisholm. That's the guy that I look at and say, okay, it makes a lot of sense. He's a guy who's controllable for a couple of more years. He's very young. He plays center field. He can play second base. And when he plays second base, Nick Gonzalez could move over to third and give Jared Triolo some days, or not Jared Triolo, Brian Hayes some days off. His presence would probably mean that Jared Triolo doesn't need to be carried on the 26-man roster anymore, which, I love Triolo defensively, but the bat just simply hasn't been there this season. Frankly, hasn't been there for Brian Hayes either, but that's very different rabbit hole. I say all that to say that Jazz Chisholm would make a ton of sense for the Pirates. He is not an elite defender in center. Don't get it twisted. He's a much better defender on the infield. However, he would be an upgrade over Jack Sawinski defensively, and offensively, he would certainly be an upgrade over Michael A. Taylor. That, to me, is a clear, identifiable guy. They've been linked to him by various reports based on things that we're hearing. I don't know if they'll be able to get it done, but if there is a splash pickup, I think that's the most likely one, and frankly, the only one that I look at of any of the big-name guys, whether that's Garrett Crochet, whether that's, I can go across the board at some of these bigger names like a Brent Rooker or JJ Bleday or anybody else who's been thrown around out there. Maybe some of the Rockies guys, I would look at maybe, Diaz would be a catcher that could maybe make a deal of sense, a reunion back in Pittsburgh. But regardless, I think the most obvious big splash, interesting name that would be exciting for the Pirates would be Jazz Chisholm, and I don't think it's impossible.
I mean, hopefully we see something. They're obviously going to have to make some kind of move. Charrington's essentially committed to it pretty publicly that they're going to add, unless they fall off a big clip over the next couple days. Hopefully we're going to see those additions. But I appreciate you jumping back on with us. Hope to have you back on soon to discuss another winning series or another winning season in Pittsburgh.
No, always a pleasure, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. All right, and welcome back. So now, no Nick Gonzalez for who knows how long. He hasn't been hitting consistently, but he had some big hits lately. We got to ask ourselves, do they go external? Are they going to even be able to go external at this point? Because now some of the names even discussed with Andrew, Jazz Chisholm's off the board, went to the Yankees. Jesse Winker's a name that we've heard talked about. He's off the board from the Nationals. He went to the Mets. Isaac Paredes, for some reason, the Cubs wanted him. They traded Christopher Morel to the Rays for Paredes. We only have a few days. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to address this. I want to say that that Charrington is going to make some kind of move to improve the team. I don't know to what extent it will meaningfully impact the team and their playoff chances in 2024. I thought Paredes was someone who could work in Pittsburgh. The Rays also have Yandy Diaz. There was some reports that he could be dealt. He had a personal leave for, I think, a week. But he's back with the team. I think he hit a home run like 2 days ago. So he plays first base, third base. If he kind of gives Key more time off and then faces left-handed pitching for Tellez, that kind of seems like a really good fit. I know we need outfield, but if Bay can hit, Palacios, the problem is more the guys that we have that we expected to be productive just haven't been. Like Henry Davis, we're in spring training and we're seeing him. He hit like 6-7 home runs, whatever. And then we get to the regular season and he's just not hitting anything. So you want to see some kind of production there. Joey Bart's really tailed off. I know he gets some clutch RBIs, which is great because you need that. Palacios is the same way. Occasionally he's going to get those clutch RBIs, but a lot of times he's going to go like 0 for 3, 0 for 4. And that's a struggle. Brian Hayes is, again, had a clutch hit today, but he's been just hitting into so many double plays lately. It's become like a meme. And Connor Joe, he is not an everyday player, and when he's playing every day, it shows. It shows that he shouldn't be an everyday player. I don't know if they're going to be able to address second base. I think at this stage they may need to stick internal with that because I don't even know what the options are looking at like the teams and who potentially would be available. Hopefully they're able to get somebody. The caliber of Yandy Diaz, again, isn't something that is being publicly discussed, and maybe that's for the best. Taylor Ward is still out there. He hit I think a grand slam in the game today. Otherwise hasn't really been good lately and only hits lefties, essentially. There's a lot of bad options out there, and there's a lot of options that are being talked about a lot, like JJ Bleday and Brent Rooker, and it doesn't seem like the A's are going to part with them. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm no Nostradamus like Destin apparently is per Shelton, but hopefully the team is able to add something because we're still in a really tough stretch of games. Because looking ahead, we're staying on the road. We got 3 games in Houston against the Astros, who they're on a tear. I mean, they're still back to first in their division. They almost swept the Dodgers. Narrowly missed out on that, but currently 55 and 50. So technically tied with the Mariners for first place in the AL West. But we've got some good matchups. The first one, Monday, Paul Skeens versus fellow 2023 draft pick, Jake Bloss. He was 99th pick overall. I don't know if he's making his debut. I don't think he is, but no, he has started 3 games already. That's crazy. Like, he got up as fast as he did too. But Skeens versus Jake Bloss, who has also accelerated through the minors. Tuesday, it's TBD. Probably going to be Falter, but maybe they go with the bullpen game. Maybe they've got something else. And he's going against Hunter Brown, who has been doing really well this season. He got off to a slow start, but he's been on fire lately. He's got his ERA down to an even 4, 9-6 record, 1.37 whip, and 110.1 innings. A lot of strikeouts too, more than a K per inning. So he's going to be someone to watch out for. And then the third game, we've got Martin Perez, who's had some significant struggles this season. And he's going up against Framber Valdez, who is very good. I'll just leave it at that. So that's going to be a challenge. That's definitely going to be a challenge. Yeah, Valdez, 3.43 ERA and 110.1 innings. It doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but he makes batters look foolish. Coming off a series where we barely avoided getting swept, you really want to try to do some damage in that one. I like our chances. Skeens versus Bloss. Maybe in the one versus Brown, if Falter's in, or if we have like a legitimate bullpen game. But Perez. We'll see how he does in that one. And then we're back home next weekend. Diamondbacks. So we got a lot of matchups guys that we're going to see again. Brandon Pfaadt is in game 1 against Luis Ortiz. Yober Diaz, who pitched in the game today, going against Marco Gonzalez. And then on Sunday, we've got Jordan Montgomery, the southpaw, off-season acquisition, going up against Mitch Keller. I'm mixed on these matchups because I don't like the fact that we're still going to have Marco Gonzalez going against them again. Maybe they make some moves and kind of finagle that. But Ortiz, he did pretty well. He did pretty well the first 5 innings, and Keller looked great. Pfaadt, I don't know if they're going to be able to figure him out, but Montgomery has really struggled. If we get another righty like a Yandy Diaz, you got to feel a lot more comfortable about that matchup. Hopefully we got a winning week ahead of us, and hopefully we make some ads, and hopefully I'm not going to sound like a broken record, like 99% of Pirates Twitter saying, Charrington, please do something. All right, well, that wraps it up for this week's episode of the 412 Double Play podcast. You can follow me on X at 412 Double Play. Check out steelcity.com for all your news and updates, Pirates articles, series previews, my starter spotlight, which I'm still doing, dropping typically at noon on game days. Link is always in the description. Follow the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else podcasts are found. Make sure you subscribe to get notified. If not, it's whatever. Just hopefully you're enjoying the show, because that's really all that we're doing this for. And hopefully the Pirates have a solid week. Thank you again for joining us, and let's go Bucks. Sends us off, Sawyer.
Ready, Jolly Roger, dude.